Hey, what's going on, social media world? Part 2. This is my response video to my YouTube brother, Soy Miguel Alejandro 23. That's Soy Miguel Alejandro 23. And first of all, I wanted to say excellent video talking about, well, all of your videos are super cool. This particular response video is a response to the video that you did on Pharrell's Elle magazine cover, where he had the Native American headdress and perhaps attire to a degree as far as the shirt. Excellent video. And I was typing a response, and as my response got longer and longer, I was like, hey, why don't I just do a video on this? So here it goes. One of the things that you talked about was the kind of like discomfort. I don't want to say uproar because you didn't make it seem like, people were rioting about it. But the discomfort that a number of people from the Native American community had as it relates to Pharrell doing that cover in Native American attire. And one of the comments that they said in the magazine was, he's not Native American enough to represent the culture. And to that, I say, I think that's very unfortunate how people think like that. And I always feel as though it's an unfortunate reality for a lot of multiracial people. I mean, which is crazy because this is America and the vast majority of us are multiracial people. But I think it's unfortunate that we kind of have to pick a side to represent. Like, you can't be more than one. Now, I think what people often do, and this I kind of have a problem with, when people will use the multiracial thing to sort of just downplay the black part of them. And I think that you should be able to represent all parts of your ethnicity. But my only issue, and this is just like when I see people's profiles and stuff like that, back when I used to be, web dating or whatever, the people who would classify themselves as mixed would often make black like the very last thing, like oh, by the way, I got some black up in me, but whatever. Let's talk about all this other stuff, Like, I have a problem when people carry it that way. But outside of that, assuming that everybody were to represent each part of the biochemistry that makes up who they are fairly and appropriately to the best of their ability, I think that that's the way it should go. I don't think that people should have to choose. People should have to be like, oh, well, even though my mom was white and my dad was black, I kind of look mostly black, so I have to just call myself black. But anyway, all of that to say, in an ideal world, people would be able to represent all of the beautiful aspects of their ethnicity without it being questioned of, are you enough of this or are you enough of that? Anyway, so that was one of the points that was made about Pharrell. And another point that you made as it relates to the headdress. Elle magazine is it's a pop magazine. It's a contemporary magazine. And when it comes to magazine covers, the point is to make a statement. And as unfortunate as it is, honestly, that's the headdress and the feathers, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that I'm wrong. The headdress and the feathers is as it relates to majority culture, in other words, the average person who's going to walk by a magazine and see it, the Native American feathers is what people would associate most readily with representing Native American culture. So, you know, and I'm sure that there are a number of other artifacts and things that would represent Native American culture. But the question is, would the average person walking past a magazine on a magazine rack, you know, would that catch their eye and have them say, "Oh, he's representing Native American culture"? You know, so it's kind of like the headdress. Maybe there are some other select things that he could have had. But anyway, all of that to say, I think that's why they chose the headdress, in spite of the fact that it wasn't for a particular ceremony. Although you went on to make another good point that people don't just wear the headdresses, Native Americans don't just wear the headdresses for the sake of the ceremony. So it really just upset people. Which brings me to my third point, and I think I have like four, and oh my gosh, it's 7 minutes, I'm sorry! But like I said, I was gonna type so much and my fingers were just getting so tired. I was like, I have to just talk it. Anyway, magazines, print, anything. The target demographic is probably going to be significantly older than digital things. And to say that, a lot of times the slightly older group tend to be more set in their ways and more traditionalist to a degree, and in a lot of things, at least compared to contemporary generation. So I understand the fact that that generation would perhaps feel uncomfortable because that generation also might not really know much of anything about Pharell in general. Last video, like these are multiple takes of videos. The last video I went off on a tangent about the fact that, you know, I'm an 80s baby, 90s kid, and I love my 90s music, and I'm set in my ways that this stuff that we have, like every now and then we'll hit upon some good stuff, but like and there's some great artists like, you know, Last Defense and stuff like that. I'm still jamming his stuff. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm sorry, I'm trying. But anyway, Lettucey, you know, people like that, love them. But a lot of the stuff is crap. And I remember when I was a kid, and people would say that about the music that we had. So anyway, all of that to say, a lot of times the previous generation is going to not be as open to the younger generation. The last thing I wanted to make, oh my gosh, I have to make this a 5-minute point, and I'm gonna cut it because like this was really like the whole crux of the video right here. I noticed that you use the word Indian a lot, and I noticed that when you mentioned the name of the magazine, it had the word Indian in it or something like that. And I know that for years, like, I have been fighting the good fight against people referring to Native Americans as Indians or natives as Indians because it's a mistake. So the fact that we as a culture just perpetuate that mistake as just, well, you know, Christopher Columbus thought he was in India, but he wasn't. But, you know, I mean, I'm not going to call him wrong. You can call him on it. So, I mean, let's just call them Indians still, like, hundreds of years later. Like, to me, that just it just doesn't sit right with me. And a large part of the reason that it never really sat right with me, or at least it didn't sit right with me for a while, is when I was a little kid in upstate New York. And it's, judging by your accent, I think that you might be from New York, but I don't know for sure, like, if you're from New York, but you kind of have, like, the New York accent going on. So you might know what I'm talking about when I say, you know, upstate New York. Because to the rest of the country, New York is all just New York City, like just the one big state of New York City. But for people actually from New York and New York City, they know that upstate New York is like night and day. And that's what, now upstate New York compared to New York City, it's like night and day. And I was born in New York City, but moved upstate when I was 4 and lived there until I was like 13. Then we moved to New Orleans, Louisiana. And that's another story as well. And I love New Orleans, Louisiana. I truly do. Maryland's my favorite state. North Carolina's my second favorite state. Okay. Gosh, you guys. Anyway, so as a child growing up in upstate New York, I went to Catholic school. And I was the only black kid in my class and like one of like 4, 3 in the whole school, maybe between 3 and 5 in the whole school. And I remember one day, now there were a number of, anyway, so I remember one day I was in the 5th grade and, see, I held out all 5. One day I was in the 5th grade and our teacher was doing a lesson on Native Americans. And she kept saying the word Indian. Indian, 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 Indians, 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 Indians. And, you know, the rest of the class, you know, we're all just like watching like, And eventually what she says, and I thought this was so, and we had one Native American girl in the class. So I'm like the one black kid, she was the one Native American girl. And the teacher eventually like stopped herself and she was like, so young lady, I know I keep saying Indian, and I know your people aren't Indians. I know that India is a totally different country. And it was just Christopher Columbus's mistake. But I'm so used to calling your people Indians that it's just really hard for me to switch. This is the teacher talking, by the way. And I loved that teacher, but I didn't like her. I didn't like her approach on that day. And she was like, I know I keep calling your people Indians, but it's so easy. It makes things so much easier for me. Is it okay if I just keep calling your people Indian? Do you mind? And I remember her response was like, yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, sure, like you could call us whatever, I guess. I mean, it's fine. And I just remember thinking to myself, again, being the only black kid, I was like, anyway, I just remember her response, and I was like, at least years later, over time, I was like, that would almost be like the teacher saying, Aaron, I'm just so used to calling your people niggers. Is it okay if I just continue to call them niggers? I just don't know any better. And it's just so much more comfortable to refer to your people as niggers. And I'm like the only black person in the class. What am I going to say? No, bitch. Like, and I'm sorry. I know, but it was for the effect. Okay, so I'll get into character and I'll do it again. Like as the only black kid in the class, what am I going to be like? Nah, bitch, you ain't going to call my people nigga. Who the fuck are you? I'm sorry. Language, you guys. Oh my gosh, I apologize. But anyway, you know, like, what is she gonna do? What would she say? And I just thought that was so ignorant. I'm like, you know that you're not talking about people who live in India. You know you're not talking about people who refer to their homeland as India. So why are you referring to them as Indians? And why is it okay for you to do that so much? And then why are you going to have the, dare I say, audacity to ask the one Native American girl in the class if it's okay that you continue to call her people Indians when you know that you're not talking about India? And that just stuck with me for years. And again, I love that teacher, and I never stopped loving that teacher. She was so cool. She was super cool. But I just thought that one thing was just so ignorant. So to watch your video and you refer to your people as Indians, it was just like, maybe people are okay with that, but I still think that's wrong, you know, as somebody who's dated and, well, okay, I don't need to talk about that. But I don't know. Like, I know people from India, and they are Indians. So the fact that we just perpetuate this mistake from Mr. Christopher Columbus, just, I don't get it. I was surprised, and I'm guessing that maybe it is something that people accept. But I'm like, it's not India. You know, but I guess it's kind of like Indians are they're not part Asian. India is a part of Asia. So Indians are technically Asians, but people don't understand that either. Like I remember, and one of the things that we'd have to collect from the people is their nationality. And I remember talking to this one guy. He was gorgeous, you guys. He was gorgeous. And he is Indian. And I was like, okay, so how do you classify yourself? Black, white, Asian, or other? And he ended up classifying himself as other. And he was like, well, technically, you know, Indians are Asians, but people don't really understand that. So I just classify myself as other. And I'm like, okay. You know, anyway, this is my response video for Soy Miguel Alejandro. So is it that Indian is now an acceptable classification? And if so, when and why did that change, considering that we don't live in India? Talk to you later. Peace. Be blessed.